People are really more qualified to talk about the parallels here between these two cases than the guest who joins me now, Richard Nixon's former White House counsel, John Dean. And as usual, John Dean, it's great to have you. And just as you're reading through Jack Smith's argument, I wonder what stood out to you given your experience.
Well, first, I thought it was an elegant brief. I've made a very fast trip through it at this stage. And he really relies on two core arguments. One is the historical argument that you mentioned, but before that, he also relies on the basic separation of powers, that if Trump had his way, there'd be no check on a president. And that's so contrary to our system, and it's unprecedented just in asking and even suggesting as a possibility. But you're right, the core of the argument is the historical argument. Yeah,
they argue at one point that, you know, if Trump's argument stood that presidents could commit bribery and treason and sedition, and they list all of this and saying that that's not how it works. But what part of it seems to be getting at is this idea of official acts versus private acts and some parts of immunity. And where the ballgame really seems to be is where they argue, you know, that even if Donald Trump can make the argument that some presidents do enjoy immunity, that, you know, they said this is a private scheme with private actors to achieve a private end. His effort to remain in power by fraud.
Well, you're right. This business of the official or non-official acts is that Trump is really trying to stretch a civil case into a criminal situation. That's the Fitzgerald case. And this brief very clearly knocks that down. First, that a criminal case is so much more weighty and important in the greater scheme of things than a civil case. So they argue they just aren't, you can't take the same principles and apply them. Secondly, they go on to argue that, again, in a historical context, you cannot take that case and take it the distance. It just won't stretch that far. So it's a good job of knocking down Trump's brief in total. It sort of eclipsed it as the day, the metaphor for the day.
I picked that up.